Welcome to today's horror ghost stories. Here is the story, My Dad's Bigfoot Encounter. I want to start off by saying that this story is not mine, but my dad's. To truly understand how eerie this story is, you have to understand who my dad is and how he acts. My dad grew up in Southwest Virginia and has lived there all his life. The part of this area I am mentioning is in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. He grew up mostly just himself and his sister after their mother left them when they were very little. He never really had a father figure because his father was never really involved in their childhood. Because of this, he spent most of his time taking care of his sister and hunting in the mountains away from his family. He spent probably hundreds of hours in the woods alone throughout all times of the day. It didn't matter if he couldn't sleep at 3 a.m. in the morning. He'd grab his rifle and hike miles back in the woods, find a good spot against a tree, and wait for a deer. The point I'm trying to get across is that he was absolutely not afraid of the woods and did not believe in Appalachian folklore at all. So from here I'll tell this story as he told me from a first-person perspective to avoid confusion. One morning when I was about 18, I woke up around 4 in the morning and couldn't fall back asleep. I laid there trying to doze off, but I was awake and couldn't fight it. I woke up and of course no one was home. Dad was probably still out drunk somewhere, and my sister was probably with friends from the night before. Hunting season had started a few weeks before. This year was different because I didn't have school anymore after I had graduated, so I had all the time in the world to go hunting. I grabbed my rifle, packed some snacks, got some coffee, and dressed warm since it was well into fall at this point. I hopped in my truck and drove to my favorite place to hunt. My uncle had taken me there the year before, and it was the most calm, peaceful, and beautiful spot I had ever hunted in. We went all the time during last year's season. This time I was going alone to just be by myself. I had a lot on my mind as I was deciding whether I wanted to go back to school or just start working to get away from our poverty-ridden town. So I figured sitting in the woods alone was a perfect way to be alone with my thoughts and think about my future. Finally got to the spot around 5 a.m. The place was called Panther Creek and not many people hunted there, so I figured I'd have the whole place to myself. I hiked through the woods and along old abandoned logging roads in the pitch black darkness until I found a spot that looked good. There was a large clearing about 50 yards down the hill from me. I was concealed by the trees on top of the little hill I was on, so I wouldn't have to worry about hiding myself as much. I sat down and finished the last of my coffee and started to wait. Eventually, my inability to sleep earlier caught up with me, and I eventually dozed off by accident. I woke up around 7:30 to crunching leaves, mad that I had wasted all that time sleeping, when deer could have been walking in front of me the whole time. I looked around but didn't see anything, so I figured it was probably a squirrel mad that I was in its area. Luckily, the sun was on its way up, so I could see much clearer than if it had been totally dark. I waited about 45 minutes before a monster buck walked out of the trees and into the clearing. I was shocked at how big this deer was, glad that I was able to find it, but dreading dragging it all the way back down to my truck. I picked up my rifle and aimed as well as I could with a broken scope. I had dropped my rifle the previous year and cracked the eyeglass, but I didn't have enough money to replace it, so it had to work. I lined up the shot and pulled the trigger. Luckily, it had been a clean shot and the buck only ran maybe 20 yards before falling. I tried to look at it with my scope, but it was too cracked and foggy to see the details, so I started digging through my bag to find my binoculars. I eventually found them after having to dump out the majority of my things onto the ground. I turned around and looked at the deer and realized just how big it was. I looked for a little while longer before deciding to start packing up and head down to the deer. Right when I had put my binoculars back in my bag, I heard a loud snap of a tree branch down past the deer. At first I thought it was another deer, so I turned and looked. The snapping and crunching of leaves and branches should have been my first warning that this wasn't a deer. Exploding out of the tree line came this large, hairy creature running on 2 legs. It was a dark brown, reddish color. I was kind of shocked at first, trying to understand what I was looking at. Its hair was matted and dirty. I tried to reason with myself that it was a bear, but it didn't make sense. It ran on 2 legs, not on 4 like a bear. It ran down the hill across from me towards the deer I had just shot. It moved incredibly fast for how large it was. As soon as it got to the deer, it looked at it and let out this gut-wrenching scream that sent a shiver down my back. Just the look of it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It grabbed the deer's back leg and dragged it up the hill and back into the woods in a matter of seconds. I stood there for a few seconds asking myself if I was losing my mind. Then it dawned on me that that thing knew where I was because of the rifle shot. Had it been watching me? I thought to myself. Realizing that I had been asleep for almost 2 hours with that thing in the same area as me hit me like a truck. This thing was probably twice my size and twice my weight, and I really didn't want to think about what would happen if I ran into it. Until now, I had been frozen and watching. My legs cramped up with post-adrenaline rush and I felt like throwing up. I looked at my stuff still all over the ground and decided to leave it, hightailing it down those same log trails that I had came up on. I finally made it back down to my truck and left, not knowing what had just happened. When I got back, no one was home, so I got back in my truck and drove over to my uncle's house to tell him what I had seen. When I got there, I ran through the door, startling him and my aunt. I sat down, and he could see that I was physically shaken up. I told him, but of course he tried to rationalize with me and said it was probably just a bear. Time went on, and I didn't think about it too much. I got married, had 2 sons, and started driving a semi-truck to provide for my family. One night, about 15 years later, I was coming back from a 2-week-long trip to California and back, and I was only about 50 miles from home when I passed another truck driver who looked about 20 years older than me. He flashed his lights to let me know that I was good to get back over, and I hopped on the CB radio to say thanks and be polite. He responded and we just got talking until we found out we grew up in the same area. We both liked hunting and talked about it for a while, and I told him that I had hunted in Panther Creek, West Virginia a lot when I was younger. He was silent for a moment until he responded with, "Yeah." Me and my wife used to drive through there looking for deer all the time until we saw something that made me never go back. I asked what he had seen, feeling that dread I had felt so long ago in the woods. He was hesitant because he didn't think I'd believe him. I finally convinced him, and this is what he told me. Me and my wife were driving up there one night down some old back road before my kids were born, looking for deer, and we rounded a corner. My headlights caught something on the other side of the road on top of the bank. I stopped to see what it was, but before we could even stop, it jumped out in front of us. I slammed on my brakes and stopped only about 5 yards in front of it. It was a big hairy animal that looked like a big gorilla. It had red fur that was tangled and messy. It looked at me and my wife and screamed at us. It was so loud that we both jumped out of shock. And just like it had jumped out, it ran down the bank on the other side of the road. "We hauled ass out of there and we haven't been back since," he said. I was shocked. I hadn't told him my story, so there's no way he was messing with me. Another few years had passed when my uncle called me. I answered and he said, "They're looking for your Bigfoot." I was confused and angry that he was still teasing me about this after so many years had passed. I asked him what he meant and told him to stop teasing me about it, and he said, "You serious, buddy? That TV show, Finding Bigfoot, is in Panther Creek right now looking for it." I didn't even know what to say. Part of me hoped something was found so I wouldn't be ridiculed anymore, but part of me hoped they didn't run into whatever I did. My dad told me this story even when I was very little. He still tells me today, and I'm 21 now, so I don't think he's just messing around with me. He absolutely swears on his life that this is a true story. He doesn't believe in Bigfoot, but he definitely doesn't know what he saw that morning. Next story. I helped a movie character. The story I'm about to tell you sounds crazy, but I assure you it happened. To start off, I am currently 15 and I was home alone for most of the night this night. This happened last month. I was sitting in the room of my house, which I call the pet room, because needless to explain, it is where my animals live. I was watching my current favorite movie, Jurassic World. It was probably about 2:30 in the morning. The movie was currently on my very least favorite scene, the scene where Claire's assistant Zara gets killed. I always hated that scene. I felt bad for Zara. Just as it ended, I decided to turn the TV off and go get a snack. I was